Hello and welcome back to Ada Pulse, the community-funded news channel bringing you up to date with everything Cardano. And because we are community-funded, there is no coin chilling, there is no paper motion, we don't even discuss token price. We are just here to disseminate information. On today's episode of Exploring Cardano, we talk to CJ, the founder of the Whiskees NFT collection, a 10,000 unique NFT collection that also doubles up as a partial investment into whiskey barrels. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. And without further ado, here's CJ. Can you sort of explain the traditional whiskey industry and how cask gauging works, and then sort of talk about how your project and your NFT project sort of pulls in on top of that?
Yeah, sure. So so the cask aging. So I guess with whiskey, right? The aging process creates kind of rarity and it limits the supply of what's available from the different distilleries. So the aging process within the wooden cask is super important to basically mellow out the spirit, make it essentially more smooth to drink. And then it does as it ages with each year, right? It increases the rarity as well because there is a limited supply from every distillery and how much is available. So so the way that it usually works though is distilleries will fill the casks and then they oftentimes need capital immediately to help kind of pay the bills, right? Keep the lights on, pay the staff. So what they do oftentimes is they try to sell it to potential investors to essentially, make that money. And then on the investor side, you actually get a pretty steep discount on the whiskey itself. So it just is it's kind of good for both parties, right? Like you get a kind of like a wholesale rate from the distillery on the whiskey casks as they age, and they taste horrible at year zero, obviously, right? They're it's very harsh. And it's kind of cool as they age. The wood imparts that flavor from the barrel, and it turns from like a clear color to that more like brownish, right, like golden hue that you see within the aged whiskeys. So
Yeah.
it's really important, obviously, to do, and I think everyone sees and knows the benefit, right, of like a 10-year, 12-year, right, even 40-year, crazy stuff like that, right? The Scotch whiskeys or just other whiskeys in general. So,
And then sort of how
and
does
then, oh yeah, oh no, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. The second part of the question.
Yeah, so I think it's important sort of on the financial side, because I think a lot of people understand aging whiskey, but they don't understand that you can actually invest in the cask barrels before they're actually sold by the distillery. So then, how does your NFT project sort of build on top of this industry and give access to people to sort of crowdfund these barrels?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, I mean, traditionally to get into this, there's usually a pretty steep cost for a person, and there's a lot of complications, right? Like, what distillery do I go from, right? Like, do I get Irish whiskey? Do I get Scotch? Do I get bourbon? Right? Japanese? There's a ton of options out there, and I think a barrier to entry is something like you got to spend up to like 25,000 in some cases, right, to just even get access to casks. So I think the way that crowdfunding like makes it really great is that people that potentially couldn't get access to this or don't know enough about this type of asset essentially can use the Cardano blockchain and NFTs in general to essentially kind of have that access to a cool asset that's not correlated to the stock market, right? I think in 2022, I think through June, I saw some stats that, like, whiskey was up like almost 8%. Everything else was pretty much down, right? Gold was down 2%.
People are never
Bonds
going
were
to stop
down.
drinking whiskey.
Yeah. It's in the bad times, what do? You probably go grab a glass, right? In the good times, you celebrate and you grab a
Yeah.
glass. So it goes both ways. So. Yeah.
So
and I think I don't know, like Cardano. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no. You keep going.
I was gonna say why Cardano, right? Like, so I've been involved with Cardano for a while, just kind of on like more of the investor side. I call myself the normie of our team. I mean that the process and everything was my idea, but so yeah, so I started into Cardano in I think it was January 2018, and I saw it go to buck 40, right? I'm like, okay, it's dipping now, right? I'm gonna get it on the downturn, and it kept going down and down and down and down, and I kept just kind of dollar cost averaging in, and eventually, I was sitting there, I'm like, it's like mid 2018, I'm like, this is not going back up right now, is it? And so I kind of took the time to learn about all that was happening with Cardano, with like the Shelley era incoming, with the staking. I was really excited for the smart contract piece of it. I don't think people probably didn't even know that NFTs were going to be a big thing then. So it just kept going. We got into the bull market, and then I think the biggest thing that drives the Cardano NFT community is just how, I don't know, there's a lot of passion behind it, right? A lot of people
Yeah.
like care deeply for a lot of these NFTs they invest in, and they're just really connected. They're super helpful. Like I met a lot of founders at CNFT Con. They were all like, "Yeah, let me know how we can help you guys." So it was just really cool to see. It's just like a big family almost, compared to some other ecosystems.
Yeah, that's great. So, can you run me through some of the specifics of how the ownership actually works? I know your project is still sort of in the early phases, and you're looking to release a lot of the stuff this year. How sort of the payouts work, how the casks are chosen, and then sort of the basically the full stack of how the project works.
Yeah. So we actually did just release a cool video on our site that kind of goes through that a little bit.
I
Which
did. I
if you haven't
saw it. It
checked
was
that
a
out, that take
pretty good video.
Yeah, so hopefully it kind of gives the overview. But yeah, so in general, yeah, the way it works is we would have the mint, and then 50% of whatever you mint, right, whatever NFTs, goes to the whiskey casks. So essentially, that 50% is for the art, and then the other 50% is for the casks. So we partnered with a kind of like a firm that has a lot of connections with certain distilleries over in Scotland and Ireland. And we are working with them, and we're going to choose the kind of the rarest and best casks after the mint that are available to us. So I think they're really great, and they've kind of helped us a lot along the process. And sorry, I'm trying to think here. The other way it'll work essentially is we're going to split the casks up into kind of like three buckets. So essentially, the casks need to age 3 years to actually be considered Irish whiskey or Scotch whiskey. So after that 3-year period, you can then kind of sell them as whiskey. So we're going to break it up into 3 groups. So we're going to have the first third of the casks are going to be in that first bucket, and that'll be the 3-year bucket. So when that 3-year time point comes, we'll kind of function like a DAO, where each NFT owner, we'll basically have like a vote essentially, and they can vote to either keep the casks, we can vote to sell them, or we can vote to potentially bottle them as well, right, and kind of like brand it and bottle it. So that'll happen at that 3-year time point for the first third of the casks, and then at that 5-year time point, we'll do the same thing again. And then at that 10-year time point, we'll do the same thing again. So we're kind of strategically picking the casks that kind of match those time points. So for example, the first 3 years, Irish whiskey is actually there's just not as many distilleries, so we're going to focus on that type of whiskey because it's just a little more kind of like rare in the beginning, and so there's a higher demand. So we're going to kind of like front load the casks with the Irish whiskey. And then Scotch, obviously, as it ages, that has a lot more value. So we're going to, backload the 10-year casks with a lot more Scotch. So we kind of have a good mix, I think, of kind of in between. And essentially, what we want the community, the NFT community, to kind of own where this goes. So if there's other votes that people want to do or propose, we're going to kind of have that process set up as well.
Great, that's really interesting. I think another question that sort of comes to mind is then how are these casks going to be selected, and what's sort of your experience in whiskey, and what's the experience guiding behind purchasing these casks? Because obviously with this sort of investment, you can probably make bad investments and good investments, and that obviously reflects on the return for the NFT holders.
Yeah, yeah. So I got into whiskey kind of just on the casual side, right? More the enjoyment end of it. So my father-in-law was big into it. I think I had my first whiskey taste, and I had some Lefroy, and it was very peated and smoky. And I was like, oh man, this is some interesting stuff. Obviously I was young and didn't really know what I was doing. But I think from there I've kind of like grown to kind of learn about it more, explore it more, appreciate it a lot more for sure. So from that end, I've been more kind of a taster as such. But I really think when we made that connection, that the company we're working for, they're actually based within the UK, kind of like in the London area. So they know a lot. They've been doing this for a really long time. So we're really relying on them to kind of help us out through that process. I will say though, there's obviously been distilleries that it's kind of like the beer boom, right? Like the beer boom, at least in the United States, where the beer, a lot of just craft beer makers kind of came out of nowhere, and a lot of them kind of went under, right? The business model didn't work. The interesting thing about whiskey actually is even if the distillery itself kind of doesn't work out, those barrels still have a lot of value, right? There's a lot of blenders, such as like Johnny Walker or some other ones, if it's Scotch, right, that will purchase that and kind of use that within their blending process to make their own whiskey. So it's kind of funny because it actually increases the rarity sometimes if the distillery goes defunct, yeah, because there just isn't enough whiskey to go around for the global demand. So it is important though, yes, to pick a distillery that's not like, oh, this stuff just isn't very good, right? Like that can happen. But I think we're partnered with they're a good partner for us to kind of have that expertise. So it's not just us. I mean, we're going to have the final say, but I think it won't be just us making that decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the other question that comes up is, since this is sort of like an investment, what are the legal ramifications and the sort of the processes that you've had to put in place for this to happen?
Yeah, I think there's definitely, especially now, right? There's all these concerns coming to light with FTX or Alameda, those kind of things. From the legal side, we are incorporated overseas in Cyprus, so we did that strategically to kind of help out with some of the legal side of things. And then we've also partnered with a law firm, and they specialize actually in rewards-based NFTs. And they've done a lot of big names, I think, on like Polygon or Ethereum. And then they've also done, if anyone's heard of Goofy Gophers on the Cardano blockchain, they're minting pretty soon. They partnered with them as well. So they have a lot of experience in that, and they're kind of helping us to navigate the regulatory hurdles, that could come with that. I think also the interesting thing is, like, even though there's a lot of scrutiny on tokens and those kind of things, NFT regulations aren't very defined, right? It's still like the early stages of things. So,
yeah,
I think it's kind of gray. So I think we're going to definitely going to keep, our eyes on all of that. But I think our process or the way we set up the company really helps. None of the casks have to age in either Ireland if they're Irish whiskey, right, or in Scotland if they're Scotch whiskey. So they actually never get like repatriated into the United States, and I'm the only person on the team based here. The rest of the team's actually based in Europe. So so I think that kind of helps us as well.
Yeah, and so what about sort of the proof of reserves as well? I think that's very key, especially when we're talking about the recent sort of FTX and these collapse. So the proof that these funds have been spent on these whiskey casks, and then the ownership directed to the NFT. How is that going to be implemented?
Yeah, obviously when you bridge, crypto with real world, I think that, there's always some trust that's needed, unfortunately, right? If I could totally decentralize this, I would 100% would. But
yeah,
I think that's kind of our goal. But I think the way that we're going to try to tackle that is we're going to have a ADA handle wallet. So it's Whiskees, Whiskees. You can go on Pool PM, search it right now. There's not much there, but what we're going to do is after the casks are acquired, we're going to make one NFT per cask, and then we're going to have a bunch of metadata essentially built into that NFT. So it'll say which distillery it was from, right, when it was filled, how much was filled, and then we're going to label it with things like, is that going to be a 3-year cask, a 5-year cask, or a 10-year cask? So we're going to try to use that, and then as they're sold, we're going to burn those NFTs. So essentially, at any point in time, if you are a Whiskees NFT holder, you could go to that Pool PM page wallet, and you could kind of check every cask that we have. So that's kind of our way to tackle it. We'll also have a percentage of the mint will be sent towards a treasury, because we know we have to do the voting, right? So we have to make sure that has funding. And then we also just want to kind of reward holders, because we know 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? That's a long time to wait on something. So we're trying to bake in some additional utility as well. So we'll have a wallet with the kind of like a treasury funds as well. So.
Sure. And so what about the longevity of the project? So you've got a 10,000 mint. Is this going to be sort of a rolling mint, or is this pretty much a one-off mint purchase and then sort of keep the project going, or are there going to be more mints and sort of more opportunities for investing in different whiskeys?
Yeah. So I think the plan is for one large mint. Obviously we're going to see how the market's doing and see what the demand is for the project to just kind of keep that strategy. It'll still be Series 1 will still be the 10,000 NFT collection. But as we go on, we would love to, obviously, if there's enough demand and we have another, for enough demand for another mint, we would like to do that as well. I think we would actually focus on kind of having your tier 1 as almost like it'll be like it's the whiskey too, but it's also like a club membership, right? Where when we do the second drop, there will actually be less fees, because our team will have already kind of been paid up front to kind of do some of those things over that time period and kind of be invested in the project. So I think the plan would be that we have a second mint, and that depending on which rarity tier you have, it's actually a less fee percentage the higher the rarity tier. So we want to give some benefits to holders and kind of let the project grow.
Okay, yeah. So there's lots of room for growth. What's one of the biggest hurdles that you've encountered while setting this up?
I think the legal thing was a big hurdle. It took us. We talked to a lot of different law firms, and none really knew NFTs, or none really knew how to like handle this really. So it was important for us to find a firm that could kind of really help us. So that was a big one. And then I think just talking with the team, trying to figure out, like, I guess, how to bridge, right, that like once we have the mint, to like bridge that money back into fiat for cask purchase. So I think we might be able to actually use something like USDC, right, or some of those other stable coins to do it, which would be great. It's kind of like it removes that other aspect of like having to put it into a bank and then having to transfer it from there, which is really cool. But I think those were probably our two biggest things. I got really lucky. The team is awesome. So I didn't mention them, but our artist EOP, he designed Aqua Farmers for Liquid, so he knows what he's doing. He's already done a 10,000 NFT drop, right? He's been around and he's still active within their community. And then our developer, he works Splash. He works for NFT Maker, so for Patrick and that team. So he knows that tool inside and out. We plan to use that for our mint. So I just feel super lucky to have the experience with those guys on the team.
Great, yeah. I think that the legal issues are some of the biggest hurdles for a lot of projects, especially with the regulation or lack of regulation. No one really knows what side of the law they stand on. Now, what's something exciting going on in the Cardano space apart from your project that that you've got your eyes on?
I really like. There's two things. So another NFT project I really enjoy, or I'm really excited about, is Goofy Gophers. I think they're doing something similar and super cool with crypto mining. So I think they're mining Kadama, Litecoin, Dogecoin, a couple others, but they're all going to kind of do the same thing, where if you have a Goofy Gopher, it kind of entitles you to have kind of rewards based back in those other cryptocurrencies. So I think that's super cool. And then I'm really excited for Liquid's launch. I think that the lending in Cardano and the DeFi space definitely, needs some growth. So I think that'll be super cool and kind of see it on par with other chains. And then I think Indigo protocol, so like the Indy token and stuff like that, kind of snuck up on me. It's that loan kind of centric thing, but I think that's a super cool aspect as well. I think it'd be so awesome if you could. This is just like my pie in the sky dream. I haven't been able to convince that team yet, but I think it'd be super cool to be able to deposit your NFT, right, and be able to kind of use that ADA or use that's in assets now as part of this project as well. Also, we'll keep reaching out and see if we can get something set up, but I think that'd be super cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I think sort of this use case of NFTs, where the NFT market is evolving from pretty much just being links to JPEGs to JPEGs to them being investment opportunities. Yeah. Where do you think, or do you have any ideas on where NFTs are headed, and what sort of cool use cases we could have in the future?
Yeah, I that's the part I think of NFTs that really excite me. I think at first, like you said, it started as like really cool digital art that you own the IP rights, right? And those are all great and good. And then I think it started to evolve where those projects have started to think about like, okay, let's make it like kind of like a club membership, or let's make it like, you can buy merchandise, for my project. I think some of the cool things I'm excited about is actually the gaming too. I feel like, people, like Call of Duty, right? People pay so much money for these skins of like all these different things that they earn within the game. I just think monetizing that and having it through an NFT is like a super cool idea. And as long as the games make it fun, I just think there's a lot of opportunity there. And then obviously the investment portion, there's a way. I heard somebody at Rare Bloom when I was there talk about they're trying to do something similar with like real estate, where you kind of like crowdfund and like parse out real estate. And I thought that was pretty cool too. It was like through Airbnbs. So I just think there's a lot of cool things coming, and people are just kind of trying to figure out like, there's just this, the limits it's limitless, which makes it hard and awesome all at the same time, right? To try to put a use case to it. So
yeah, it's really exciting where the future of NFTs is heading. And obviously, we can't finish this interview without the question: what's your favorite whiskey? For me personally, I'm a big fan of Isla Whiskees, so it's Lefroy for me. But what about you?
You're the PD. There's so many good ones. I recently had the Delwini 15 year, and I really enjoyed that one. So that's I'd have to say right now that's probably my favorite. But it's a really hard question. There's so many good ones to pick. I just opened a Redbreast. It's the Irish whiskey, the triple distilled. That's super smooth. I'm definitely more of a Scotch or Irish whiskey guy. For a bourbon, I'd say like Blanton's. Blanton's is a good one from the Buffalo Trace Distillery. So yeah, there's so many good ones. I mean, it's hard to go wrong. Just stay away from Fireball, and you're probably good.
I think that's the best advice ever given.